colleagues in causing mischief and trouble around the world, and a very good friend, and he's from Frontiers, and he has a blurb out there, so okay, go for it.
Great, well thank you. Good, fantastic start, and it's great to, I'm very humbled to be up here and follow these two guys. I'm so grateful for what they're doing. I use the Ceaseless Prayer app, and it's fantastic. If you don't have it, you should have it before you walk out of here for the next break. And GRN doing such a great work. And audio, I don't mention audio in here in part because I knew that GRN was going to share, and I'm such a huge fan of audio. Last year I had two stories that came to me from teams working in two different areas of the world. Both of them were beginning to see, working among unreached peoples, unreached Muslim peoples, beginning to see something happen. And they had groups of guys meeting together that were engaged. They were studying the scriptures weekly, not yet believers, but beginning to study what the scriptures say and how to grow in obedience to those. But both stories went exactly the same way. They didn't feel like people were just as excited as they were expecting them to be. And then they started giving them the scriptures in audio format, and they said it was like a light switch went off. Even though these were fully literate people, highly literate people, getting something in audio format, that preference for oral communications is so strong, and I'm such a huge fan of what GRN is doing. I want to talk briefly about trends in technology, and I'm going to probably talk a little bit less on the implications for missions, in part because I want that dialogue to continue as we have our coffee breaks, and we've got so many people here doing so many amazing things, and Jonathan hiding in the back there. I'm going to highlight you in just a second. But there's so much going on, and the verse that comes to my mind is Habakkuk 2:14, that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the seas. And that's been a favorite passage of mine for a long, long time, but the more I see happening with technology, the more excited I am, because it really seems like we're on the cusp of that really being a reality. A couple of quick stories that come to my mind. Let's see, first I'm going to, before I jump into, I'm with Frontiers. I don't know if John mentioned that. I work with Frontiers. I've got my friend and teammate Jeremy here. We've got a table set up in the back room as well. We minister exclusively among Muslim peoples, and there's never been a more exciting time to be working among Muslim peoples. We're seeing so many exciting things going on around the world, and I spent my time on the field over in Central Asia, and when one of the things that kind of put technology on the map for me, I remember walking down the street one day, I think it was around 2000, and I was walking down the street with a friend of mine, and we had one of those God moments, right? I think we have those. The Holy Spirit gives us those, where we saw a young man coming out of a storefront, and we can't explain it other than to say that it was the Spirit that moved us. We greeted him, Assalamu alaikum. He greeted us back, and we began a conversation right there on the street. Why? Only God knows. But it became evident very quickly. He was Iranian, young Iranian man, on holiday. And the reason he'd come to Kazakhstan was because he was looking for a safe place he could get on the internet and search about Jesus. We said, well, we know something about about this man. We're not the internet, but we can certainly sit down and talk to you. And he came to faith that day. That helped put technology on the map for me. Just a couple of weeks ago, I got a message from one of our field workers. We've been giving out micro SD cards to Syrian refugees. Again, giving them the audio scriptures and some other resources, some visual media. And the response was, we've never heard this before. Do you have more micro SD cards? We want more for our family. So these are the days that we're living in. It's quite exciting, and we're blessed to be a part of this. I also work, as John mentioned, the Mobile Ministry Forum is a network that began about 5 years ago. We're very excited to be a part of it. I encourage you to check out the website, mobileministryforum.org. Some of you are already very involved. This is not an organization, it's just a network. It's a place where we can encourage one another and grow together, and catalyzing the church to use a lot of these types of technologies that we're talking about, to use them more effectively and to collaborate much more than even we're doing today. two quick quotations come to mind that I hope will kind of set the tone, not only for what I share, but I think as we continue through the day. Francis Schaeffer, I love this quotation. I think it's so appropriate. Each generation of the church in each setting has the responsibility of sharing the gospel in understandable terms, considering the language and thought forms of that setting. And I think that ought to challenge us. You know, I think we get very stuck in old ways of doing things. And I'm working in Frontiers, which prides itself on being a kind of a very pioneering organization. And yet, for a couple of years I began noticing what was going on in this area of technology and media and how significant it was. And then beginning to try to encourage our people to say, hey, you need to start looking at this. You need to embrace this. And that's challenging sometimes, getting people to move. We get into those set ways of doing things. And so I love this challenge from Francis Schaeffer. We have the responsibility to share the gospel in understandable terms. And I think today, now more than ever, it means sharing more and more in modern forms of media. And then Wayne Gretzky, the great one. If you're a hockey fan, you obviously know who he is. And even if you're not a hockey fan, you probably still know who he is. When asked what made him such a great player, he said this: I skate not to where the puck is, but where it's going to be. And that is a challenge to me, and I think to all of us. I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, I understand, but again, looking at where technology is going and preparing ourselves to be there. I had a friend about 5 years ago come up to me. It might have been a little bit longer than that now. He was a BlackBerry user, so that'll kind of date things right there, okay? Any old BlackBerry users in here? So he had a BlackBerry, and he said, Brad, I'm on this thing all the time. And he said, maybe you can help me. Because I spend so much time on my BlackBerry, I have it with me everywhere I go. I'd love to have something Christian on here. I'd love to have some kind of app that would encourage me to think more and keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. But when I went to the App Store, all I could find were Islamic apps. And so we went and we kind of took a look in the App Store, and sure enough, that's what we found. Well, a year or so after that, I was giving a talk, and I thought, you know what, let me just take a look. I was going to look up prayer apps, actually. Thank you for changing the trend on this. I looked up prayer apps. The first 23 of 25 apps listed were Islamic. And that was a real statement with where the church was at with its use of mobile technology. This was about 4 years ago. Really running way behind. The Islamic world has known for so long that this was a key to reaching people, to reaching the faithful, and to reaching out and to propagate their faith, was to put their message on the mobile phone. And here we are, I think, finally beginning to catch up. It's so exciting. I think we're doing a great job of catching up. But we don't want to just catch up to where other people are in their use of mobile technology and other technologies as well. We want to skate to where the puck's going to be. And so, Christopher, it's great to see things like the Spiffio app. I mean, I think really kind of cutting edge stuff that makes me proud to be in here with you guys. Okay, well, what are some of the technologies? What are the trends that we're seeing right now? One that is obviously not a new trend, mobiles. Mobiles is really kind of driving a lot of what we're talking about here today. And it's staggering what continues to happen. 4.6 billion mobile phone users in the world today, with a reach of about 85% of the world's population when you consider family, extended family, who would have access to a mobile device through a family member. The reach of mobile far exceeds the combined reach of TV, of internet, of radio, of all of the past mass communications means that we've had. It's all happening on mobile. And I think we in the West often fail to understand just how significant mobile has been, because we grew up with all of this technology, right? We sort of grew into video cassette players and audio cassette players and DVD players and CD players and GPS devices and cameras and digital cameras and video cameras, and all of this technology was sort of incrementally moving into our lives, while the rest of the world, or much of the rest of the world, was that was kind of passing them by. It was out of reach. And along comes this one device, the mobile phone, that put it all into their pockets. And it obviously, again, I think we all kind of realize this. It's the one device people will save and spend and sacrifice for. So everything happening on the mobile device, we need to be on that mobile device. And one of the things that's happening as a result of mobile devices is sort of a new trend. Google is investing a lot into researching this because it's proven to be so significant. It's called micro moments. Have any of you heard that term? Micro moments. Very tiny moments. And the reason for micro moments is because we're all carrying around that device in our pockets. What do you do when you're stuck in line? What do you do when you're stuck at a red light for a little bit longer than you think? Anyone guilty here of that? Okay, I confess every now and then. I do. I have those micro moments. That's a 7-second moment or something that I have at that red light. And I might be tempted to pull out my mobile phone. Certainly if I'm standing in line somewhere and maybe to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, that's not a micro moment. That's like a feature-length movie moment. But we have our mobile device with us. But the micro moments are significant. The average person pulls out his or her phone anywhere between 150 and 250 times a day. If you don't believe it, you can download an app and put it on there. You can measure it for yourselves. You pull that phone out a lot more than you think you do. And this is not a Western phenomenon. This is happening around the globe. These micro moments are changing things for us. And certainly social media is one of the biggest. Again, not a new trend, but I think we're finally waking up to the fact that social media matters. I work in an organization where security is a big deal because bad things can happen to people. I just heard from one of our workers the other day, discipling a young gal, and her father took her phone and began to scrutinize everything in it. Fortunately, moments before, she had just removed some media that was on her phone that would have really put her in dire straits had it been found. So we live in an age where security is an issue, but social media matters. And trying to get my organization to embrace social media and saying, hey, if we're going to stay relevant, we have to be on social media. And we're finally doing that, not just in our home office in terms of recruiting and mobilizing new workers, but beyond that, on the field. We realize that we have to be on social media if we're going to be relating to people. Among the heaviest users of social media around the world, what do you find? Indonesia, Turkey, India, Saudi Arabia, the heaviest users per capita of social media in the world. If we want to reach people, it's going to have to start being more and more on social media. Obviously, we're seeing greater connectivity, and no big surprise there. 3.5 billion, I believe, is where we're at right now in terms of connected internet users in the world. 40% of the world population right now on the internet. More than half of that is now happening through the mobile device, not surprisingly. But the future is bright as far as that's concerned. We see some exciting things going on with Google's Project Loon, which is, I'm not sure the latest on that, but they have this network of high-altitude balloons that are providing internet access in remote areas. You've got Zuckerberg and others involved in internet.org working through other means, looking at drone technology and other means, again, to try to get the internet to where it isn't today. And the future is very bright. We're beginning to look at 5G connectivity in the West, coming down the pike pretty soon, which is, if that doesn't mean anything to you, just think really, 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 really fast internet service. So we're living in a world of greater connectivity. We're living in a world of the Internet of Things becoming reality. Samsung has said that by 2020, every one of its devices will be IoT ready, will be Internet of Things ready. That means every one of its devices is going to be connected to the internet. Refrigerators, DVD players, TVs, everything. I mean, obviously we see this already with smart TVs. Even some of the other appliances that we have in our homes now are beginning to have this IoT connectivity. The Internet of Things, it's getting harder and harder to escape being connected. Of course, along with greater connectivity becomes a greater concern with connectivity, and one thing that we just need to stay aware of as all of this is happening is censorship. I was talking with a friend of mine, Jeremy, and I work with a teammate who's based over in Turkey in the recent coup, and of course one of the first things that happened as soon as that coup began to unfold, we can argue whether or not it was actually a coup attempt or not, but As that was beginning to unfold, the first thing that happened, of course, was that all of the social networks were brought down, so that people were not able to connect. Of course, people began to find ways around that, but that's the kind of world that we're living in as well, and we need to be thinking about that as we plan our strategies, particularly because as we talk about unreached peoples, many of them are unreached because they're in the types of places where censorship is happening. Targeted advertising. I was just sitting down at breakfast with my father-in-law this morning, and he made the comment, you know, it doesn't matter how many people we reach, it matters if we reach the right person. If it's the one person who God is preparing us to reach, that's what matters. And one of the most exciting things that's happening right now, one of the most exciting trends through social media and web, is obviously the marketing world has been completely transformed. The power for us to precisely, with laser-like precision, target people with a particular message, people with a particular message, is so incredibly exciting. To use Facebook ads or Google AdWords to get a message before somebody is absolutely amazing. About a month ago, John and I were over at a conference, had the privilege of hearing from a team that is working in a very difficult country, a country where decades of work have yielded a handful of believers. There's a couple of churches, maybe a few churches that were known to be in existence. After much extraordinary prayer, and thank you, Christopher, for what you're doing to promote more and more prayer, after a season of extraordinary prayer, they felt like God was calling them to use social media more effectively. None of them came from a technology background or a media background, but they felt God was saying, use Facebook. In 2 years, since they began using Facebook and Facebook advertising to try to locate those people whom God might be working in, the number of believers, the number of churches has doubled in 2 years from what has happened in decades of previous work. 2 years, we've seen a doubling in the number of believers. Baptisms to the third and almost, I think now, moving into the fourth generation. We're seeing it not just new people being reached, but we're seeing people reaching people. Very exciting stuff. Power of it. If you're not using things like Facebook and Google Ads, this is a great area to begin to move in, whether you're trying to get the Bible out there or some other types of media. The rise of visual media. Probably not surprising if you're on social media. Most of us are using at least one social media network. You've no doubt noticed how much more visual everything has become. This statistic on the right is kind of staggering to me. 74% of all internet traffic by 2017 will be video. Pretty significant. How many of us are working in the realm of video right now? 94% of content with relevant images gets content with relevant images gets 94% more views than content without images. Okay, that's the world that we're living in. It's highly, highly visual. Again, driven by the mobile phone and that camera that is on almost every phone in the world now, even if it's not a smartphone. That preference for visual media continues to grow and grow and grow. And if you want your message to be noticed, increasingly it needs to be visual. On the line of visual media and video, some of the trends that we're beginning to see that I think are pretty exciting. We haven't really begun to delve into these yet, but I think this is where the trend is happening, live video. Meerkat came along a couple of years ago and quickly was superseded by Periscope, Twitter's live video tool. Mobile only, anywhere, anytime, you can begin to broadcast live through your mobile phone to a worldwide audience. And they can interact with you in real time. This is the difference with some of the past live video things we've had, is the interactivity that's built right into these services. Facebook then said, hey, this is a thing, we need to be in this as well. They've launched Facebook Live. You can go on there, you can view it on your computer, but if you want to broadcast, it can only be easily be done through your mobile device. But you can see a map, you can see anywhere in the world, at any given time, people that are broadcasting live from their mobile phone. Largely what I see when I go on and I look around the unreached world is an imam preaching from the mosque. Okay? God help us if we don't start quickly moving into this, because if we're not filling this vacuum, people are out there looking for this type of content. It may not be high numbers yet, but I trust you, they're out there looking for content, and they're gonna look at whatever's out there. And let's make sure that it's the gospel that they're finding. The other big trend is towards 360-degree content. You may not have seen this yet. Facebook now has support for 360-degree content built right in, as does YouTube. Samsung did something incredible to help begin to push this along. They came out with their 360 camera. It's the Samsung Gear 360 camera, about $350. Very high quality video. I think it's 4K quality video. It's a very affordable, fairly affordable device, and they began giving these out to journalists all over the world. We're beginning to see more and more and more 360-degree content. News, one of the big things. I took my VR goggles into the office not long ago. Somebody, I think it was the BBC, may have been invited to go into Mecca, and they filmed the Hajj in 360-degree video. And you're there walking along with these goggles on. If you've not tried them, it's kind of funny. It's almost more entertaining watching the person wearing them, but you're walking along, you're looking all over, and you feel like you're sitting right there in Mecca, going around the Hajj, and you're looking down into people's eyes. My first response when I saw this was to pray for people. I found myself praying for people wearing these funny little goggles on my head. But that's how immersive this is. This is coming in fast, and it seems, well, we're talking about unreached peoples. This seems way out of reach of unreached peoples. Well, for $5, you can make your own VR goggles, okay, right out of cardboard. This is not out of the realm of the near-term experiences for people among unreached people groups. Chatbots, another exciting technology. Who in here has heard of a chatbot? Okay, and this is a tech bunch, so maybe half of us have heard of chatbots. Okay, talk to this guy in the back. All right, chatbots are, it's basically software that allows you to interact to get information or entertainment. And you're using these already, whether you know them or not, know it or not. This is one that, can I share this, Jonathan? So this is one that Jonathan is working on. It's called the ASL Bible Bot. This is embedded into a messaging app like Telegram, one of the most popular messaging apps in the world. You may not, if you're working with deaf, you may not know sign language, but all you need to do is reference a verse, and it will immediately display a video showing the sign language version of the passage that you type on your screen. It's really exciting stuff. Bots are kind of floating in the background, kind of listening, kind of waiting to respond and assist you with different needs. They learn things about you. Show ice? Is that a Show Ice? This just came out not long ago. This is a Microsoft chatbot that was developed. It was released on WeChat. If you work with Chinese, if you are Chinese, Chinese are on WeChat. Within 72 hours, they had over 10 million users, and they were so overwhelmed they had to shut the system down. This became so popular. This app sits in the background, it listens to your conversations, and it begins to interact with you. If it hears you talk about the weather, it'll offer you the weather forecast. If it heard you mention that you broke up with your boyfriend, it's going to ask you, how are you feeling today? Are you sad today about your boyfriend? It's learning things, and it's asking things about you, and it's engaging people in conversation. It's kind of scary. It's a little bit weird. Okay, but this is where things are moving. And again, if we're not putting the gospel in these types of things, people are going to find other types of messages. Voice services. Who knows what that is sitting on the table there? Who has one of those? Only a few of us. Okay, Mike, what is it? Amazon Echo. This is going to be one of the hottest selling things this holiday season. They now have a small version. It runs for $50, maybe a little bit less. They're going to have some very good deals on this. Voice services. By 2020, I believe, maybe 2017, they're estimating 30% of internet usage is going to be happening with voice. It's going to be voice-driven. Devices like the Amazon Echo, and of course most of us are already using this right on our phones. We've got Apple Siri, we've got Microsoft's Cortana, we've got Google's, it was Google now Google Assistant. This type of voice, these voice services are becoming more and more and more common. These types of devices in our homes are going to become more and more often. And again, these are the sources that people are going to for information. My kids walk into the room every morning and say, Google, or say, Alexa, what is the weather? Or they say, they have a math question, they say, Alexa, what is 73 times 16 divided by 322? And Alexa responds right away. Okay? Soon those questions are going to get more, a little bit deeper, a little bit more profound. People are going to be asking, Alexa, does God care about me? What's Alexa going to answer if we're not on there? If we're not developing content for these types of devices? Okay, I know my time's running out here, but augmented reality coming in fast and furious. Again, you may not think this is something that's real relevant for unreached peoples. I don't really know how it is just yet, but it is coming in. Tommy Ahonen, one of the leading gurus in the mobile industry, years ago said this is going to be the next mass media, augmented reality. He's the one who identified mobiles to become the significant factor that they are today. Augmented reality is just that it augments our perception of reality. It adds information to the real world around us. You contrast that with virtual reality, which is a much more immersive experience. It could be the real world. It could be an imaginary world, but it's a very immersive experience. You're using these VR goggles that we mentioned before. Again, I think we're going to begin to see really on the training end of things, virtual reality is going to become more and more of interest. Again, being able to do the Hajj around in Mecca, be able to experience that for people that are preparing to go to the Muslim world, to kind of begin to understand what it might be like for a Muslim to experience something like that. Things like that are very, very powerful. So in summary, if I had to throw out a few terms or words, this is where technology and media is going. It's there and it's heading there. Mobile, it's being connected, it's being reachable. These micro moments that we have throughout the day, and being able to make sure that when people are having these micro moments, capitalizing on those micro moments, that the gospel is available in those moments. It's all about being visual, increasingly, I would say oral as well, and it's social, and then immediate, instant, and live. So real quickly, just a few thoughts as we finish up here. Now what? What do we do with all of this? Really, I hope for more and more and more dialogue, because these are new technologies. We need lots of creative thinkers that can begin to help us and lead us in these ways. New media is the new lingua franca. It is the second heart language of people today. You walk around, young, old, poor, rich, everyone, everywhere is on their mobile device. They're accessing all kinds of media on that device. We need to learn to speak that language. We send missionaries out, they spend months or years learning language. How much time, how hard is it to get them to spend a week learning how to use some basic features on mobile phones, learning to understand the significance of media for unreached peoples? We need to start training people to use these tools and these technologies. I don't care if you're a technology or a media person. If you're going to the mission field right now, you need to understand these things, or you're not going to be nearly as effective as you could be. Mobile, we need to be there. The rest of the world we need to be there. Again, understanding those micro moments and how we can use them. Google's got a great website set up for this. I can give you the URL later. You can just Google micro moments, Google, or Google Think, and you'll see a great resource they've set up to help people begin to understand how to capitalize on these micro moments. Content is still king, and praise God we've got the best content in the world, because we have the best king in the world. But we need to encode it for relevant media. We need to put it into the forms, as that Francis Schaeffer quote was mentioning, we need to put it in the forms that are relevant for people today. And content is only one part of a comprehensive strategy, right? It's easy to get a video out there. We can distribute videos, and we've done that in the past. But what we can do now, the things that we have the ability to do today is to do more than just distribute media. We have the ability of beginning to engage people and interact with them, right? We can post a video on social media, and we can begin to dialogue with them. What did you think about that? Do you have any questions? Here's the next step that you can take to learn more. There's a great new resource, Missions Media U, that's just been launched. This is an exciting new training endeavor. There's only a few courses right now, but they're very, very good. The first course is on foundations of media strategy. I encourage you, take a look at what they have to offer. They're offering courses on storytelling. There'll be more courses coming. but a great way to get our people equipped. Recruit media and tech people into your organizations, even if you're not a tech and media organization. Like Frontiers, we've got a guy now, he's out there, he's recognizing what's happening, he's out there recruiting media people to come into our organization. We're a church planting ministry, but we recognize that we have to have media people, more and more media people involved in our organization. And then at the end of the day, we need to remember it's still about relationships. It's not about the technology, it's not about the media. Those are tools, and then we need to be using these tools. But the bottom line is it's still about these relationships. You know, the example I mentioned of the group in North Africa that's using social media so effectively. The social media component, that's all the front end. And it immediately drives people into face-to-face relationships. But they've realized how they can leverage that media and leverage this technology to direct them to those face-to-face relationships where they're seeing God work in significant ways. Thank you very much. I think I don't know where I am time-wise, John, but...
A little bit over, that's not a problem. Okay. Thanks, Brian. And we're going to go straight to a coffee break now, and we'll be back here at 10:40